Well, hello, everyone. I'm Colleen Benelli, and I am here with my daughter, Robin Benelli. Hi, Rob.
Hi, everybody. Hello.
And we're really excited to have Brett Bevell Brett Bevell back as our guest again. A little bit of a tongue twister.
Hi, everyone.
We're so glad to have you again, Brett, and so excited about your topic. We were talking about it on our podcast this morning and telling everybody they have to listen because it's such a great topic. He's going to be talking about attuning trees and stones and objects with Reiki. So, great topic and lots to talk about. Some new cards that he has coming out, and our Wisdom of Reiki conference, and so many good things. So, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you formally with your bio and share with everybody who you are and how they find you. So, Reiki Master Brett Bevell is the author of several books, including Psychic Reiki, The Wizard's Guide to Energy Healing, The Reiki Magic Guide to Self-Attunement, and Reiki for Spiritual Healing. Brett is also a pioneer in the field of energy healing apps, first exploring this concept in 2013 through his book, New Reiki Software for Divine Living. Oh, we have to talk about that. And now offering his energy healing work through the Soulvana App by Mindvalley. Since receiving his Reiki Master initiation in 1995, Brett has dedicated himself to discovering new Reiki techniques that work collaboratively with the higher self. These simple techniques are not only effective, but also shift Reiki into a practice of daily living that can transform even the most mundane aspects of our lives into works of healing. Brett's clients include several Hollywood stars and screenwriters, and he is publicly endorsed by Carrie Ann Inaba from ABC's Dancing with the Stars. Also a poet and a performance artist, Brett is author of America Needs a Woman President, America Needs a Buddhist President, a poem that initially aired nationwide on NPR's All Things Considered. Brett has electrified audiences around the world with his live oral recitations, and he has often been compared to the late poet Allen Ginsberg. Bevell's poetry, Brett's poetry, is featured in the anthology Chorus of a Literary Mixtape, and he performed with Saul Williams and Asia Monet. Is that correctly?
Yeah.
At Joe's Pub in New York City as part of the book's release. Brett's work is also part of NPR's permanent website archives. Well, just wow, Brett. So good. So anyway, you can find him at the Academy of Love and Light.us for online courses. That's his website. Academy of Love and Light.us. Also for live events, brettbevell.com. That's BrettBevell. His email is brettbevell@gmail. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube is all Brett Bevell, and TikTok is at Reiki Wizard. So all of that said,
Must have gotten your TikTok early to be able to get Reiki Wizard. Nice. I have to ask, do you find, I know this is not our topic at all,
yeah.
but I have, I know a few people that are with Reiki and poetry. Did you start your poetry before? Did you notice a difference with Reiki energy? Does it help you to channel the poetry at all, or are they kind of separate?
That's a really wonderful question, and I would say the poetry for me came before I was initiated into Reiki, so that was kind of part of who I was before Reiki. And I still write poetry, but probably not as much as I used to. But I do think that there is a middle ground, right? And I wasn't planning to talk about this, but
Yeah, sorry.
no, it's fine. Just let it flow where it wants to go. In my book, New Reiki Software for Divine Living, there are what I call Reiki Psalms, right? So I don't have that book with me, and I don't have them memorized, unfortunately. But they are poetic phrases written, in honor of the energy and in honor of that kind of divine wisdom that's in the energy. And it does, though, relate to our topic today, because what I did is I actually empowered each of those psalms with their own Reiki crystal and programmed it so that when somebody reads it, it's actually sending energy. So that is kind of a middle ground of where, it's not quite maybe poetry, but it is poetic, in terms of the playing with language, and also having the energy being merged in and coming through the language. And that's something that I'm actually really glad you asked this question, because around 2000, it's been a while, maybe 2003, 2004, there was a group of poets that I was working with at Omega Institute, and we were exploring this concept that we called ourselves word shamans. And it was this idea of not just doing, poetry to excite the audience or just to get a point across, but like, how could you actually work with the energy that's in the language so that it becomes either an energetic healing experience or a consciousness altering experience that is really kind of blending that place of shamanism and language. And so, the fact that you're asking this question, yes, I think there's a lot of power where Reiki and poetry can come together. I just know that I think in my own journey, it's kind of gone off in another direction, but it's something that I actually think I want to explore more again in my own future as a writer. So I see my art kind of coming back into that. So actually, thank you so much for asking that question.
Yeah, that's interesting because, as a writer of empowerments and things like that, you do know that the Reiki flows into that. And from our experience of writing, experiences, attunements, things like that, that the Reiki flows into that, of course, for sure. Mm-hmm. It occurred to me because I have someone, it's like, you have to be careful of confidentiality, that talks about how much the Reiki energy, they're in, writing poetry now, and they notice a difference after sessions, and tend to write a lot after sessions with the poetry, because the Reiki really helps that flow and tapping into that kind of higher idea of language that I think so many poets do. That's what, and writers, there's this higher consciousness of language that can come through, and the Reiki bridges some of that gap.
It does. And this conversation actually reminds me, I don't do so much anymore, but I used to teach a lot of writing classes at Omega Institute, both in the catalog and also for our staff here. And there were times when I would really blend in a writing class that was not, a class about energy healing, but there were many times when I would weave in group energy healing experiences for that very purpose of like shifting the consciousness of the students who were there for a writing class, but, so that it can take them into that, non-ordinary state of consciousness from which a lot of amazing poetry and writing can emerge. So, this is very good that you brought this up.
As you said, the conversation flows where it goes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really.
Well, I have to say for myself, all of my writing has to be Reiki infused, just because it's Reiki doing the speaking to begin with. And then probably sometimes the biggest challenge is to translate it into a more common language. So I can definitely tell when I'm writing and it's spirit speak. And then it's like, okay, how do I say this word in a more mainstream kind of a way? But it definitely changes. And then the other thing that I found is when I'm writing and I engage with Reiki and I think I'm going to say one thing and this is the topic, comes out completely different. It's like, what?
Well, it's channeling. It's a form of downloading, and like you said, calling or keeping your word count lower than, like if you're writing an article or something like that, having to condense the words that come through in more of a spiritual state into, a 2,000 word article or something like that, which I'm sure is where the workshops, where the actually trained writers, it's probably easier for you, Brett, than it
Mhm.
would be maybe for Colleen or I. But yeah, that's really interesting.
Well, and you mentioned Omega several times. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? Because I know I don't know if you are the program strategist or a program strategist for the Omega Institute.
Yeah, I'm a program strategist, so I'm a member of a team, and there's several of us that hire the faculty and create the workshops. Even though it's 2024, we're already looking at and working on 2025. So it's several of us, and Omega Institute is a really beautiful, magical place. It's on 200 acres of land, 90 minutes north of New York City. It's near the village of Rhinebeck, and in the lush and beautiful Hudson Valley. And at Omega, people come to take workshops in a variety of different topics that can range from energy healing, shamanic work, yoga, meditation, psychic meditations, artwork, writing. We have a lot of creative writing workshops here, actually. And so, really, anything that might fall under that umbrella of human transformation or human potential, those kinds of workshops happen at Omega, and we've been doing that work for, I think it's 48 years now. So,
Long time.
The beautiful thing about Omega is that there's an energy here, like an energy field that I think people can often feel it when they're here on campus. And to me, there's several factors that have worked to create that field. One is that when you think of 48 years of continuous, ongoing workshops happening over and over again in the same buildings, in the same vicinity, and it's just created this kind of residual vibration of healing that I feel it's in the land, it's in the trees, it's in the buildings. It's you can feel it, very, very palpable. And another layer of that is that Omega is a seasonal operation, so we're open from usually late May until late October. And during that season, there's usually about 100 or so seasonal staff that are here working to help make the facilities run, to run the cafe, the kitchen, the housekeeping department, all those important tangible jobs, the things that need to happen. And not only are they working on campus and living on campus, but they're also at the same time taking classes, and they're in there. So there's a whole series of classes that Omega doesn't publish that are just for the staff, right? And so the staff, who's serving your latte might also be a Reiki master, or a very developed yoga student, or deeply immersed in mindful meditation. And so I think that inner work that is happening by these seasonal staff who are also living on campus, and again, there's usually 100 or more of them, I think also adds to that energy field that is just part of the Omega experience. And so many people who teach at Omega will often say that when they have a class at Omega, that they sense that the students seem to go to a deeper place than at other places where they may teach. And I really think it's because of that residual energy that has been cultivated here for the last 48 years. And it's a beautiful place. And I'm looking forward to you being here later this summer as part of the Reiki conference, the Wisdom of Reiki conference, which we've had now since I think the first year was in 2018. And obviously we missed 2020 because of COVID, but otherwise we've been going every year. And it's a beautiful conference. We have William Rand is usually one of the keynote speakers every year, and we invite other wonderful Reiki teachers from various lineages at times, and where we all come together and share in the beautiful energy of Reiki, but also within the beautiful container of Omega, which I think just takes it again to a deeper magical place.
Absolutely. Well, I attended the Wisdom of Reiki conference last year as a guest, and it was extraordinary. And like you say, just even coming up to the land, even prior to arriving on the land, it's a very palpable, welcoming energy. And I'm sure there is an attraction energy where it attracts the people that are wanting that energy, ready to receive it. I would say that for me, and we'll be talking about the trees there too, but for me, attending it, I definitely could feel the receiving and the nourishing part of the land welcoming me and the whole group. And in addition, I felt so just so connected, both with the land, but also the other people attending, even though I didn't have a chance to talk to everybody. And of course, it's a big facility. And but in every room going into the I don't know if you call it a cafeteria or but where we all eat together, there's just a beautiful energy of it. And so, yes, I'm super excited to be attending and presenting Animal Reiki at the Wisdom of Reiki conferences this year. So thank you so much for inviting me.
No, thank you for being part of it. I'm very excited that you're going to be here.
Yes. And that is, I believe it's June 21st.
June 20th through 22nd. So it's a very magical, weekend. It's right on the cusp of the summer solstice. And there's also going to be a full moon that weekend. So combining all the astrological elements with the Reiki and the power of Omega, I think it's going to be a very magical weekend.
Oh, I can feel it already. Well, we weren't planning to talk about this, but just as in case, is there a way if somebody wants to teach there that they can, become a facilitator there?
There is. I wish I knew. So I know that there's a link on the Omega website. Unfortunately, I don't know where it is.
Okay.
Because it doesn't go to me. It goes to another member of the programming department. But there is a place on the Omega website where you can submit a proposal. And then what that does, it sends it not to me, but it goes to one of my coworkers, and then she vets through them. And then if she thinks it's something that would be like up my alley, then she'll send it to me, or maybe she'll send it to one of my coworkers, or she herself might pursue it because she's also one of the major programmers here. So there is on the Omega website. I just off the top of my head, I don't know exactly where that is, but that is one way that we do have faculty submit their work.
Great. Okay. Well, and that's omegainstitute.com.
No, it's www.eomega.org.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I should know that, but it's okay. Well, great. Thank you so much. Robin, anything before we?
No, I was looking to see if I could find the place, but it's a well-organized website, so you'll be able to find it easily on where you can submit proposals for that.
Absolutely.
Well, we are here to talk about an exciting topic, which is attuning trees and stones. I know we said that already, but at the same time, I want to go ahead and get into that topic because we'll have a lot to talk about. We had talked about doing an experience. So last time we were on, you were on, Brett, if you haven't listened to that, go and listen to Brett did an amazing crystal Reiki experience or empowerment that you can go and listen to. It was super powerful. We did it along with Brett live, and both of us were like, we were a little glad that it was at the end of the episode because we got so altered so quickly. But we were thinking maybe we would do one that you have for this subject at the beginning. And even though Colleen and I might be a little altered from it, it might be kind of fun. So
yeah.
If you're okay to do that. So maybe explain just a little bit about what people are going to do or what we're going to do and what people will experience. And then we'll get into the subject.
Sure. Sounds great. So I'll just give a little bit of backstory so that people understand what the empowerment is about and also how it came to me. So what you're going to be empowered to is an energetic crystal, not a physical crystal, but an energetic crystal that is made out of Reiki. That's made out of the light of Reiki, and it will exist just in front of your heart chakra. And once you are empowered to that, you will have the ability to work with that Reiki crystal to be able to send Reiki to yourself or to others or to trees or the land or situations, simply through the power of you communicating with that crystal. And you can do so either through the power of your voice by simply talking to it, or through the power of your mind by basically speaking to it psychically. And so for me, that's where the term Psychic Reiki comes in, because I wrote a book around this process that's called Psychic Reiki. And to give a little history around it, this isn't something that I was looking to create or searching for. It literally was something that just came to me in 2007. I was traveling by myself in Asia. I was actually in the former royal capital of Laos, a beautiful village really called Luang Prabang, a lot of beautiful Buddhist temples there. And while I was there, first of all, I got very sick. And all the guidebooks said, if you can avoid going to a Laotian hospital, it's probably better than going to one, because it's more likely that you would come out of the hospital with something worse than what you had going in. And so I felt like this, I didn't think of this at the time, but looking back on it, it feels to me like this was a test. Like, okay, Brett, are you willing to really put your money where your mouth is and do energy healing to try to relieve the issues that are going on? And at the time, I had a fever. I had it felt like this swelling in the area of my spleen, where it felt like my spleen was like the size of a small grapefruit or something, and had the guidebooks said, go to a hospital or whatever, I would have, but they said don't. So I was like, okay. So I basically just hauled up into my room and just did energy healing on myself nonstop for a couple of days. At a certain point, I heard a voice in my head say, would you like a new spleen? Sure, yes. And then instantly I felt fine. Now, am I saying that physically that a new spleen manifested in my body? No, I'm not saying that, but I felt like there was some kind of dramatic shift that happened in that moment, because I'd been hiding in my room for a couple of days, just doing energy healing nonstop. I was very hungry, so I suddenly felt better. I went out to get something to eat, and a short walk from the guest house where I was staying, there was a small Indian food establishment. And I remember going there and ordering a dish of aloo gobi, which is one of my favorite Indian food dishes. I sat down in this plastic white chair outside of the establishment. There was a little plastic table near me, and there was also an empty white plastic chair next to me. And while I was waiting for my food, I suddenly felt this amazing presence simply appear in the chair next to me, and it felt very clear to me immediately that it was the presence of Mikawa Sui and of his spirit. And I felt from his spirit this ball of white light go into the area of my heart chakra. I didn't immediately know or fully comprehend what that was about, other than it was very mind altering for me at the time. And it kind of put me into an altered state of consciousness that I was going in and out of for a period of weeks after that. But what eventually I came to understand after tuning in energetically was that ball of white light was this Reiki crystal. And again, an energetic crystal made out of the light of Reiki that had been put in front of my heart chakra. And that I could then work with it to send Reiki and to do things with Reiki also that maybe were a little outside the box of traditional training. So what I'm going to do in a minute here is basically offer that same empowerment to anyone here who's listening to this podcast. And so what I want to invite you to do is, if you are listening to the podcast, first of all, make sure that you are either seated or lying down. I don't want you, chopping vegetables or driving a tractor or anything. If you need to hit the pause button to do that, please do. And then I'll begin by taking you through an experience that will probably go for about 5 minutes or so. And that will be an empowerment so that you will have your own Reiki crystal. And then I will also kind of elaborately, deepen that experience with just some deeper healing as well. So maybe before I dive into that, do either of you have any questions before I move into that?
No, it's
Okay.
just great. And we've experienced it before. So just looking forward to more expansion of it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to begin by just simply asking my Reiki crystal to send the Reiki crystal empowerment to everybody who is viewing this. And as it's doing that, what it looks like to me almost energetically is like a little, if you could imagine the Reiki crystal in my field being like a sun or a miniature sun. It's almost like I see this like solar flare reaching out to the heart center of everyone who's viewing this, and where it's then beginning to energetically recreate itself in your field. And it'll take about several minutes to do that. But while it's doing that, I'm also just going to do a deeper healing on everybody. So I'm going to begin by inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your brain and nervous system. And follow that by inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your respiratory system. And then inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your digestive system. And inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your muscular system. And inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your circulatory system. And inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your skeletal system. And inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to all of your major glands and all your major organs, just to cover anything that I've left out, such as liver, spleen, kidneys, etc. And from here, I'm going to invite my Reiki crystal to create what I call Reiki lasers, which you could imagine intense beams of Reiki light between any 2 points in time and space. So I'm inviting my Reiki crystal to manifest Reiki lasers running between each and every bone in your body to each and every other bone in your body, manifesting a beautiful web of Reiki light existing inside of you now. And I'm also going to invite my Reiki crystal to manifest Reiki lasers running through all of your organs and organ systems through time, from the moment of your birth up to the present moment, just to help clear the timelines of those organs and organ systems. And from here, I'm going to invite my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to all of your chakras, those 7 energy wheels talked about in yoga and in the Vedic healing systems. And from here, inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your meridians, those energetic pathways talked about in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And from here, inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your gates of consciousness, which are 2 very important acupressure points at the base of the skull, top of the neck. That sometimes is a place where other people's energy can glob onto us, hence the term a pain in the neck. So it's a good place to keep clean energetically. And from here, I'm inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your mental body. And from here, inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your emotional body. And from here, inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to your karmic body. And from here, I'm inviting my Reiki crystal now to manifest around you something I call a Reiki sphere of divine grace, which if you could see, it would be like a huge bubble or a huge egg filled with the light of Reiki, totally enveloping you on all levels. And from here, I'm going to invite my Reiki crystal to manifest a Reiki portal 6 inches above your crown chakra, connecting you to whatever divine healing realm would be most appropriate for you in this moment, and just leaving that up to the wisdom and the intelligence of the Reiki energy to decide what that should be for each individual. And from here, I'm going to invite my Reiki crystal now to bring you into a Reiki meditation for deep stillness and inner peace. And from here, invite my Reiki crystal to bring the cellular consciousness in each cell of your body into a Reiki meditation for self-love, so that you're literally embodying self-love at the cellular level. And from here, I'm going to invite my Reiki crystal now to shift all the different lines of light that it's been sending to now be for the most gentle and most perfect form of integration for you. And as it's doing that, it's just bringing through kind of a more dense vibration of the energy, just to help remind you that even though you are a spiritual being, you do exist in the world of form. You do have a body that we need to remember and be mindful of. And it also, as that's going on, it feels to me energetically that For most of you, the empowerment piece is either fully complete or coming into completion, where it feels like you now have your own energetic Reiki crystal. There may be a few where that's still winding into its final stage of completion, but I'm just going to hold space as the integration continues, and just going to add to this, just to invite my Reiki crystal now to manifest a grounding cord made out of the light of Reiki running from your root chakra all the way down to the center of the earth, just to help ground and center you. And so very gently and very easily, just let your consciousness begin to focus on your physical body. Let yourself become aware of the feeling of the chair or the bed or the couch supporting you wherever you are. Let yourself be mindful and aware of the sensation of the clothing or the blanket against your skin. Let yourself be aware of any sounds happening around you inside the room or outside the room. And very gently and very easily, just let your consciousness come back into your body, back into the room, back into this time and space. And give yourself permission if you need to stretch an arm or a leg or wiggle your toes, fingertips, whatever you need to do to bring your awareness back into your body. So that is the Reiki crystal empowerment, or the psychic Reiki empowerment. I refer to it both ways. Know that empowerment is with you from this moment forward. It's not something that is going to dissolve or that expires in 30 days or anything like that. So it's part of your field. Know too that with that energetic crystal sitting in front of your heart chakra, you can, and maybe I'll even just give you a taste of this just so that you can have an experience with it. So I'm going to invite you just to talk either with your mind, your voice. So if you want to talk out loud, you can, or if you prefer to use your mind. So just tune into that Reiki crystal sitting in front of the center of your chest, in front of your heart chakra, and just ask it or invite it to begin sending Reiki to your brain and nervous system. And again, you can make that happen as easily as a thought or a whisper to your own Reiki crystal. Beautiful. And from here, go ahead and invite your Reiki crystal also to send Reiki to anywhere in your body that might be in need of healing. Maybe you have a injured knee or ankle, or maybe there's some stress in your shoulders. Just wherever you would like to have some Reiki, just ask your Reiki crystal to send some Reiki there. And you can also invite your Reiki crystal to bring you into a particular meditative state. So I often just say, for inner peace or self-love, but even if you're needing a meditation for courage or forgiveness, you could just ask your Reiki crystal to bring you into a particular meditative state. So I'll leave that up to you. Just invite it to bring you into a Reiki meditation for, inner peace, forgiveness, courage, whatever it might be. And the beautiful thing is the Reiki crystal, which again is made out of the light of Reiki, so it has that divine intelligence of Reiki in it, and it will begin to work with your conscious to bring you into that meditative state that you have requested the meditation to be on. And we'll let you just kind of sit and marinate in that energetic space with your own Reiki meditation. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and just invite you now to shift all the different lines of light that your Reiki crystal has been sending to now be for the most gentle and most perfect form of integration. And again, we're just kind of touching upon some of the many things that your Reiki crystal can do, just to kind of give you a taste, an energetic taste of the possibilities. Now, when you're the practitioner and you're doing the integration, some people, not everybody, but some people might feel a slight sense of pressure in the area of your chest as the more kind of earthy vibrations are coming through because they're coming through that Reiki crystal. So, if you're feeling any slight pressure in the chest area, don't be alarmed. It's very common at this stage in the healing for some people to have that experience. And so that's just a kind of a quick little taste of working with your Reiki crystal. And again, could go on much longer in terms of the depth of the healing and what one can focus on. But basically, the beautiful thing about it is that it's a very easy access point for people to be able to experience Reiki. One does not need to have already been attuned to Reiki in order to do this or to receive this, though I do find that people who are already attuned or initiated into Reiki can find it to be a very wonderful complement to their traditional training. Even doing in-person sessions, where you've got your hands on somebody, you can also be talking to your Reiki crystal and having it be doing a whole other set of things while you're going through the hand positions. So it's just a nice addition for people to have.
Well, thank you. And, when you, bleh. I have words, I really do. When you had completed placing it, and said, well, we'll go through an experience, I was so glad that you had us go to self, because my immediate thought was, oh, who can I use this to send to people?
Mm-hmm.
And I know I can use it for that too. But I loved that, going straight into my brain, my ears. I've been having vestibular problems with my ears and balance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like an immediate shift.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, from having like a ringing in my ear. The ringing is gone.
Oh, wow.
So I'm always so amazed that I'm so amazed at what Reiki does, but it's gone. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thanks to Mikawa Sui and the energy.
Brett, with Reiki, one of the things about Reiki that we commonly talk about is that it flows through us, right? It's not from our own life force, where there are other forms of energy healing that are from where you're building up your own life force. And I know you know this, but just to kind of explain the context of my question, where you build up your own life force and then you're using your life force to help others heal. Mm-hmm. And with Reiki, one of the differences is that we're using an external energy to channel through us as practitioners to help heal or facilitate healing. Mm-hmm. Do you find with the Reiki crystal, because it's kind of outside of you, that there's another layer of that kind of aspect of it, because it's the energy is channeling through the Reiki crystal to others? Or do you find it in a similar fashion as when you're just, kind of giving more traditional Reiki, for lack of a better word?
That's a really good question. It's interesting because when I'm doing healings, so a lot of the healings I do now are often group healings, because a really nice thing about the Reiki crystal is you can, work on a number of people simultaneously. And so my experience when I'm doing that is that I do kind of go into what I call the zone, that kind of Reiki zone, but it is different. There's a different energetic flavor to it than what I would experience, like, when we're at the Reiki conference, there's always a period where we have, people on the tables and we're all, kind of bringing the Reiki home in that way. And that does feel different. So it's not that something doesn't happen when it's with the Reiki crystal, which is slightly, outside of you. Something is happening, but it just feels different. And it's hard to quantify that with language other than to say, yes, something's going on, but it feels like a bit of a different experience. And I wish I had better language for that.
Oh, I think I completely understand what you're saying with that. And I could see with group sessions and group healing that would be a really good technique for that, as it is kind of, you're facilitating it still, but it's also doing its own work for you. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So kind of the standard, use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Ask it.
Ask it.
Yeah, because it's really probably an individual experience of it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to trees.
Yeah, let's get to trees.
We've been saying that for like an hour, but
before we go on, because we keep mentioning the Wisdom of Reiki conference, June 20th through 22nd. Also, how do people register for that?
Sure. So you would go to the Omega Institute website, so www.eomega.org. Or you could also, if you go to the Reiki.org website, I know that William has it listed there. And if you click on that, it takes you immediately to the Omega website. So if folks are more familiar with the Reiki.org, you can go there, click that link, and it'll take you right to the Omega website, and you can register there. I don't know if there are still any, but I know there was at one point there was a funder who funded 2 scholarships for it. I don't know if they've been taken yet, but it's worth a try if there's people who might want to come, but they feel like it's a stretch for their budget. If it's still at the bottom of the web page or the Reiki conference, if there are scholarships still available, then there will be a little application there. So I just want to let people know about that potential as well. But yeah, we would love to see you there. It's going to be an exciting weekend, and I love the energy. I love William's keynote, which every year I feel like I learn something new about Reiki that I didn't know. I keep thinking, okay, I've heard these stories before, and every time there's something new and different. So I'm always amazed by that, and it's going to be so much fun too with you there. I want to hear more about animal Reiki, and I'll be doing some psychic Reiki work there, and there'll be a lot of hands-on group healing experiences. So it's always an amazing time.
That's great. Well, thank you again. And I just wanted to make sure, so if people were thinking, oh, they keep talking about it, but they haven't said how to get there. So, okay, well, let's talk about the trees, because we also have the trees on the land. So let's go ahead and start with sharing your story about how this all came about with attuning the trees and stones and objects.
Yeah, I'll start with probably the stones and then move towards the trees, just because chronologically for me, that's how it developed for me as a healer. So, I got my master level in 1995, and then shortly after that, I moved to San Francisco, and during my time in San Francisco, I was doing some Huna shamanic studies with a man. He was quite old, named Jack Gray, who had studied Huna shamanism, and he, in our conversations together, he told me he'd actually had known Hawaii Takata, and that he had been instrumental, at least from his point of view, in her move from Hawaii to San Francisco. He said he had known her when she lived in Hawaii, because he was, doing studies in Hawaii, and that he said that he was part of the reason for encouraging her to move to San Francisco. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But anyway, in the studies I was doing with him, which were not Reiki, but they were more shamanic of origin, I just began to wonder, what would happen if I just started to experiment with things outside of the box of Reiki. And so I began very curious about attuning stones at that time. And what I would do is I would go to the beach in San Francisco. I would go to Land's End Beach, and there were these beautiful stones that I would gather from the beach, sometimes, nice sized stones. And because the water had, kind of made them nice and smooth, and, something that would feel nice against the skin, I would take them home to my apartment in San Francisco, and I had a massage table. And I had these stones that were all attuned to Reiki. And when I wanted to receive Reiki, I would simply just lay on the table and lay these stones on me. And the energy would emanate in a really beautiful way. And I just loved it. I really, really loved it. And then in my own development as a healer, I began to work more with also expanding that, and then working with the plant kingdom, mostly with trees. And so to kind of fast forward, I've been working at Omega Institute now for almost 25 years, not quite. And during a large portion of that time, I actually lived on campus, and because I was seasonal staff for 13 of those years. And so one of the things I always loved to do when I was on campus was to literally just play with the energy and listen to the trees. And we also used to have this we don't have it here anymore, but we used to have this very magical Divic garden that was created by a dear friend of mine named Caroline, who's no longer on this plane of existence. But it was a beautiful garden where when you would walk in there, you could feel just like this amazing energy coming from the plants. And so it's been very clear to me for a number of years that plants are conscious and sentient beings, and if human beings can enjoy the benefits of Reiki, why not the plant kingdom? And so I began working with attuning and empowering trees, and first using trying to use a traditional technique in terms of just having a substitute for the tree, because the tree is obviously too big, but having like a substitute for the tree that I was intending, okay, this is the tree, and I would just attune it as though I was attuning a person, but intending that it was for that tree. And then I would go to the tree and be next to it and invite the tree to send me some Reiki back, and I could feel it. And so that's how I started this originally. But then when the Reiki crystal, or the Psychic Reiki empowerment, came to me in 2007, that just seemed like an easier way to undergo this process. So there's a number of trees at Omega Institute that I empowered to Psychic Reiki. And then a few years ago, while William was here teaching his Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki Master class at Omega, which was a beautiful experience, which he will also be teaching that at Omega immediately after the Wisdom of Reiki conference, for those who are interested in exploring that with William. While I was in that class, I was just like, well, when we're practicing working with the ignitions, I was just really guided to do that with the trees at Omega. So, and the way I did that was to connect with what I call the diva, or the overlighting diva of the trees on campus, and kind of borrowing some of the language of from a book and a process that I've worked with over a number of years called map coning, which was developed by a woman named Michelle Small-Wright. And so I'd kind of alter that process slightly to connect with the divas of all the trees at Omega and ask them, would you like to be empowered? And they'd already been brought up to master level through many years of me attuning trees and attuning them to Psychic Reiki. And so I did the Holy Fire ignition process on the trees at Omega. And so the trees at Omega have a lot of Reiki and a lot of Reiki capacity. And there's actually an article coming out in the summer edition of the Reiki News where I talk about this process. And in that, I actually, and this was at William's suggestion, he was like, why don't you take photographs of the trees and have them send Reiki through the photographs so that people can actually experience that, through the Reiki News article. So that's also going to be in the article, where there's different trees that are kind of sending you energy through the photographs. And I've loved working with trees, for so many years now. And again, that's, I think, part of the beauty at Omega. Obviously, we don't advertise that on our website, but for those people who are in the know, all the trees at Omega are empowered to Reiki. And there's one tree in particular that's near the garden at Omega that is powered to not only Reiki, but also the other forms of energy healing I do, magical awakening. And it's literally, I think of it as being my partner or teacher, right? When a new technique is coming to me, or something that feels different, I'll actually go empower that tree first. Then I'll sit next to the tree. I'll ask it to send the energy back to me. And then I can really feel it from just being in that place of being the recipient without having to do anything, like, oh, and get a deeper sense of what that particular technique or energy is all about. So, I've loved working with trees in this way. And for folks who come to Omega this summer to experience the Wisdom of Reiki conference, we'll certainly be playing with the trees as well. For those who can't make it, at least you can get a taste of it from the article in the Reiki News for sure.
What did the trees say? I was waiting to see which, call it. So yeah, that's my question. What do the trees say?
Well, when I'm working with the trees, sometimes I feel like they kind of grab me. I don't mean physically grab me, but so at Omega, that it used to be a summer camp, right? So there's sometimes a lot of space between the housing and the offices and the classrooms and the dining hall. So we're often walking around the campus, and which means you're going to walk past a number of trees at any given point in time. And there's definitely times when the trees will just give me a message, or they'll give me a technique, or they'll tell me something, right? So it's not always me teaching them. Often it's them teaching me things that either things that they can do that I haven't thought of, or things that I can do that they're telling me about that I had no awareness of. So I really think of the trees as being co-collaborators and partners, and really honor them. And one thing that really comes through for me in working a lot with the trees is trying to bring through that energy of peace on the planet, peace, not just between human beings, not just between nations, but also peace between humanity and the earth, peace between humanity and the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. And that always feels to me a very important part of when I'm working with the trees. That always comes through very clearly, that they want to be seen and honored as sentient beings that are sharing this planet with us, and that have wisdom to share, and that can contribute to the healing that needs to happen for individuals and for humanity as a whole. So I see them as being very wise beings that often have great wisdom to share.
Well, we lived on, where Robin grew up, we lived on a 30-acre farm here in Oregon, and we have, huge forests here. And this one particular tree, there were two really big, it was forested, but two specific, very big trees. And one of the trees, about a 300-year-old fir tree, both were about 300-year-old fir trees. So very big, very stately. And when we moved onto the farm, the previous owner had really tacked up a lot of things on it. Like, the lights were pounded into it,
Mm-hmm.
and a whole shed was kind of supported by this tree. And so, of course, we removed everything and cleared the tree. And I would say that tree has had probably the greatest influence in our work and Reiki work. I spent hours and hours meditating under the tree, and really talking to it and the nature spirits. The kids growing up, the tree spirit would actually, she said her name was Beauty, and she spent so much time with the kids, and they learned about her from her. And she would actually kind of go places with them. She would talk to them. She would be in the house with them. The tree branches came right up, the lower branches came right up to their rooms and all of our rooms. And she's a huge foundation of the animal Reiki energy that was created with, when, William had asked me to write an animal Reiki course, and Robin is one of the co-authors of that too. Back in, let's see, I received Reiki in 2000, and then probably this particular journey might have been in 2006. And William had asked me to write an article about for Reiki News magazine, and I was writing Reiki and nature spirits. So I sat underneath this tree, and I would just go into these Reiki journeys, into deep meditation, and ask, what do you want to say in the article? And I was waiting for the reprimand of what we do to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, and myself as a land manager of a large property and animals and farm animals and farm life, and my own probably generational perspective of what we were doing to the earth, and the nature spirits and the tree popped in and they said, well, actually, if we could teach human beings one thing, it would be to love yourselves as much as we love you. We think you are the most amazing beings, and we love you. And when you love yourself, you create from that belief. Because when you believe yourself to be destructive, you create from that belief.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the piece that they said, the earth loves you, the trees love you, the animals love you, we all love you, love yourselves, take your place amongst us and be part of us. And that teaching has been foundational in the Animal Reiki course. And when we were writing the course, we thought we were writing a book on how to use our existing Reiki energies and the tools and techniques, which it is that too. But Robin and I were talking to William one day, and William just said something to the effect that he channeled, not realizing we didn't know it, but it was that he knew it, is that it was its own energy. The Animal Reiki course, its own energy and its own Reiki energy. So then, of course, we needed to go back into the journeys to ask, what is it? Why is it? Who is it? And it turned out to be Tree of Life. That is the core of the Animal Reiki. And then we were asking, well, why? Why does that relate? How does that relate? And of course, we all live with the trees, and the animals live with the trees, and the consciousness of the trees, and then understanding the network of the trees and the mycelium that work with the tree networks. And so but I have to say, through all of our work with imbuing things with Reiki, attuning things with Reiki, did not occur to me to actually attune the trees with Reiki. And so I'm so excited to do that.
Have fun with it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to be like, where are you going now? I've got to go attune the trees.
It's beautiful for me at Omega too, just in terms of knowing that there's these amazing tree beings that can also even though Omega is a wonderful place to work and be, there's still those days where you're stressed out, or there's a meeting that didn't go well, or etc. And to literally be able to walk out to a tree and just sit beneath it and just ask if it would be willing to send some Reiki. I mean, yes, I could do Reiki on myself, but there's something always so much more beautiful when I can just relax and let go and let it come from another being and just totally be in that place of being recipient. And so that's just another beautiful thing about working with the trees in this way, and just feeling that deep sense of reverence for them as fellow healers on this path and on this journey.
Well, do you think they also are so appreciative that there are those with the awareness of them and who they are, how they engage with us, So often we think of it as, and this was part of Animal Reiki too, was we originally thought in the attunement process for that there would be us placing a blessing upon the animals. And they said, well, actually, it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
We place it with you as well. So it just makes me wonder in your relationship with the trees, if you get that sense of appreciation from them, of how grateful they are that you know them.
Yeah, I definitely feel that and sense that. And you know, again, at Omega, obviously since COVID, there's a lot of time during the winter when we're closed, when we're working remote, and I really miss being on the land. It's not that I don't have, a few trees in my yard at home that are also empowered to Reiki, but here there's there's hundreds of them. And so there's just that different feeling, that different vibration. And again, I look at them as teachers and partners, and they're always imparting, wisdom, and sometimes that wisdom is not even necessarily about Reiki. It's about something else in my life that I need to be looking at, and that I'm not, and that they're, letting me know, hey, Brett, look at this. And so I just have deep reverence for them, and am so happy that they are willing partners on this beautiful healing journey.
One of the things that I love about the communion with the trees is their perspective of time. So I have this great elm tree outside of my office, and I live in a neighborhood, but it's like an older neighborhood with, larger lots. And one of the things that can be challenging when you're living in a neighborhood is that, like you're even talking about, Brett, how Omega just has this different sense and scale of trees. And, of course, there's the space for going out into the woods and, communing with nature and communing with the trees, but also how do we receive that where we're at? And so this elm tree outside is, first of all, it's a beautiful tree, but it's taught me a lot about that. But it's kind of also classic, where it's got these big branches that go off, and it's such a tree of life, really. It's got moss, and birds migrate through it, and so it's really been a really big teacher and a big part of this journey with Animal Reiki too, because I can look out and I stare directly at it. It's just phenomenal. And then, of course, spending time with it outside and underneath it, and it really did. I was kind of just admiring it one day, and as you said, it's these beings. I have the devas that are, or divas that are within them, and I was just admiring it. It's like, you're just so beautiful, and just showed me this whole different perspective that trees have of time, because what it showed me was this, like, how it got to watch these families that lived in this house, how it got to watch the children grow, how it got to watch, even the changing of the neighborhood, and how much it loved that, and how much it just was such a different perspective of time. And as you're talking about the trees of Omega, when you mentioned that it used to be a summer camp, right? You said that? Yeah. And it kind of brought me into that whole thing, that those trees, what they have watched with the changing, and even the children that were there, and then the people that are there for, healing and solace, and such can be, it's such important work. It's such sacred work in people's times. And this whole beautiful view that these trees have had throughout time, and then, talking about the tree growing up, it's just like they have such a different perspective of that. And that's such a big teacher. And then also in that slowing down, and, being in that tree communication, but also that tree communion in that. I mean, I know we have the perspective of the roots and the branches, but there's also the perspective of the breathing with the seasons. There's also the perspective of that time aspect that is so different from the tree's perspective than our own, and even animals, which occurred to me when you were talking, Colleen, about more about that tree of life energy. It's like, well, then also trees have that stable perspective of time that animals and humans just can't have. Even long-lived species such as tortoises and things like that, where trees can live for such a long time. So anyway, I really love that perspective of trees as well.
Yeah, trees are just so amazing. I mean, not to digress and go too far off Reiki topic.
Oh,
but,
just do it.
I know. It's like, don't apologize.
You know, a good friend of mine is Julia Butterfly Hill, who's the woman who climbed up, atop a redwood tree to prevent it from being cut down, and she lived in that tree for over 2 years. And I remember talking to her once, and she was talking about how it was at a particular time when she was in the tree, and the logging company or the lumber company was cutting down a number of other trees in that vicinity, and how she began to realize that during that time that the tree that she was staying in, which she called Luna, or named Luna, or maybe the tree told her its name was Luna, I don't know, but that the tree was oozing sap, almost like tears, like that there was this kind of grief happening with Luna, as Luna's fellow tree beings, these ancient beautiful redwoods, were being clear cut in the surrounding areas. And so she just, to hear her describe it, it was such a beautiful and kind of hair-raising experience to realize that the depth of the consciousness of the trees in terms of their connection to each other and their awareness of each other, and that if only we all humans could see that, or acknowledge the depth, that they're not just these suppliers of wood, that they are these beautiful, majestic, magical beings with consciousness and awareness and sentience.
My daughter's name is Luna, and we have that book about Julie. I just remember Butterfly. So we have
Julia Butterfly Hill. Yeah.
Yes, there's a children's book for those of you that are listening about that story, and it's an amazing book. And we don't read it as much anymore that she's a little older, but we read it a lot when she was younger.
What's it called again?
It's called Luna, because the tree's name is Luna. And, so that's part of the reason that we got it. And then I read the story. We got it at Powell's, I remember. It's a big, huge local bookstore here, Brett. And I remember reading it with her there, and we're like, oh, we're getting this book. So it's about Julia and her journey, but a children's book version of it.
Well, while we're segueing, I just have to throw this in now. It's going there.
Yeah.
Again, a little off topic, but Julia also introduced me to a community in Italy. I don't know if you've ever heard of Damanhur.
Yes.
And so we visited Damanhur. My wife and I actually got married at Damanhur, 13 years ago. And while we were there, they because we were friends of Julia Butterfly Hill, they kind of gave us a little special attention. And not only did we tour the underground temples that they built, which are beautiful and amazing temples, but they also had this one village that they had created where everybody lived in trees. But actually, the tree homes were very immaculate and beautiful and well structured, but structured so that there were no nails in any of the trees. And I remember they were walking us through this tree village, and there's these like bridges that go from one tree to the next. So the experiment they wanted to have was like, what would it be like for a number of people to just live with these trees and to not actually touch the ground for a period of time, so they can walk from tree to tree, and there's these bridges and from one apartment to the next. And again, the apartments are built so that they're around the tree, but there's no nails, there's nothing harming the tree. And they were talking about how they also have these I guess, and again, this was over 10 years ago, so I think they're actually popular now with other companies that have actually developed the same technology. But they had this technology where they would hook up musical synthesizers to the roots and to the leaves of different plants, and have the plants sing, right? And so this was all happening the same day. We heard the singing plants. We were walking around the trees, and then they walked by this one apartment that was again in the trees, and they said, "Oh yeah, a month or two ago there was a woman who lives there, and she was giving birth, and so we brought all the plants to her to sing to her while she was in labor." And so again, to me, I just thought, like, just that level of consciousness of seeing the whole plant kingdom and the tree kingdom and just this kind of unified force of life all working together in harmony. And um, I don't know, I just felt called to share that while we were on the subject. So
Well, I'm wondering about the child and the child's consciousness.
yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
wow.
Yeah.
I picture the village like the Ewoks. I mean, I know it's more elevated than the Ewoks.
Yeah.
That's how, like, in my childhood imagination, I picture it.
Yeah.
That was your favorite movie as a child.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's why.
But Damanhur has always been on my bucket list. So now it's like, oh, that's right. Rise to the top.
Yeah, definitely. If you have a chance, I would highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm. And that's Northern Italy, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like between Milan and Turin.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's on the list. So we've talked about trees. How about, some of what you know about the wisdom of stones? And I ask that not only out of our own curiosity, but one of our students, that was actually a fairly long-term student, one day we were talking about, what the stones say. And she was like, they talk? And so I'd just like to hear some more of your perspective about that for people.
Sure, certainly. So, yes, I mean, certainly stones have deep wisdom, and I'm an admirer, though I don't consider myself well versed in terms of crystal and gemstone healing, things like that. Like, I know a little bit about, the properties of selenite and amethyst and things, but I've known some other teachers who can go much further with that than I can. But stones are very, very powerful healer, whether it's a crystal or gemstone, or even just like a simple stone that like I said, that I had, these stones that I was working with from the beach. I've always found stones to be great healers and very powerful forces, also just for grounding, especially in the world of energy healing. It often can be easy to kind of live a little bit outside of our bodies, and so finding stones for grounding, even just holding a stone, carrying a stone, even when I used to teach outdoor education many years ago, sometimes we would give the children a worry stone just to kind of hold. And to me, there's a power in that. There's again, seeing the stone as a partner on a healing journey, not just as an object that you're putting something into, but as a partner on a healing journey. And so in my own, work with Reiki, I've worked a lot, again, this whole journey in terms of non-human aspects of working with Reiki, for me, it really began with stones and really working with stones in that way, and attuning them to Reiki, but also listening to their wisdom and to what they, what insights they have in terms of healing or things they wanted to share with me. I know I'm, again, kind of going off topic again, but I remember once, many years ago, and this was when I was really, I think at this point, maybe I was at level 1 Reiki, but I was also working in outdoor education in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And there was this very small little cave that I was just doing some work with. It was near this very magical yellow spring, which the town of Yellow Springs, Ohio is named after that very sacred yellow spring there. And I remember one night just going and kind of sleeping in this small cave. It was small, like not much bigger than for one person to be able to fit inside of. And while sleeping in there, connecting with just that stone energy of the cave, because the cave was pretty much just stone with a hollow opening, and just feeling in that sense. Robin, you were talking about time with the trees, and then when you think about time with the stones, it just becomes even more ancient. And I remember just sitting in that cave and resonating with the energy of the stone that the cave was created of, or from, and just the depth of that ancient knowledge, and the depth of that consciousness and that experience, being millions and millions and millions of years old, and that wisdom that's there, and just resonating with that, and just kind of drinking that in by sleeping in the cave. And so there's so much power and wisdom with the stones. And again, for a number of healers, that can manifest as doing work with crystals and gemstones, which is wonderful and beautiful, but it can also just be just with any stone has power and wisdom to it. So I certainly have a deep appreciation for the stone people, and the wisdom that they've shared with me over the years.
Yeah, I would have to say one of my core, it's called the wounded healer, one of the core wounds that I came in with, that was one I was always working on and not being able to figure it out, because it was confusing, because I always had the save the world thing, but I was such an overgiver in my saving the world that I was depleting myself.
Mm.
And one day, and I didn't really have all this awareness, this is in retrospect. And one day I was walking around this just regular track, like a running track, and just a plain street rock stopped me, said, "Stop," which I had just had enough of my shamanic work and Reiki work to be able to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I picked it up, and it said that I carry a cart behind me, and I keep putting people in my cart with no agreements about when they get out. And sometimes I put them out in there myself without their agreement of getting in it, thinking I'm going to save my world, and thinking I'm being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And so it showed me how I had this huge harness on me, and it was depleting me and frankly breaking my back. Like, this is hurting you. And so it showed me the image of that cart, and me pulling the cart full of people with no agreements, no awareness on my part that I'm doing it. And then it said, and actually it's really a control issue. It's not saving the world. It's like this little tiny street rock. And that was the beginning of this truly huge self-awareness of balance, imbalance, compassion, imbalanced compassion. How do I unload this cart? And so as I was unloading it, some of the people that were sensitive enough could feel it. Mm-hmm. And other people were just glad to get out of my cart. Can I get out of your cart now? Like, are we there yet? Type of thing, like little kids. But it has always been, I think that was the first time. I mean, I've always had a connection with all nature and being able to communicate it, but I think that was the first time I had any awareness that they could talk to me and actually have a level of profound guidance that literally changed my life.
I'm going to get to a question.
Yeah. Okay, do.
But it'll be a roundabout way. So, here in Oregon and much like New York, we have a lot of rivers. And we have a lot of really beautiful river rock here. And just as you were kind of describing, Brett, at Land's End, that it's just here, we just get that perfectly kind of stone river rock. And when you're there at the river, there's that contemplation of time, like you were saying, and what it took for those river rocks to be there over the millions of years. And this river, the spot down by my house locally, there's this beautiful place where the canyon is exposed. It's a little bit further down, and you can see the striations of time in the cliff wall. Like, it's very, very defined in the cliff wall. That's an aside, but it's just really cool because you do contemplate time in that spot a lot in the time of the year. But with going to that spot with the child, of course, she wants to collect all the rocks. And, one of the things that you kind of have to, and just loves the rocks, one of the things that you have to teach the children, first of all, you can't take every rock, not just because it's heavy, but because we can't take every rock. But if you take a few rocks, do the rocks, want to come with you? So asking the rocks, because you find sometimes that the rocks are like, no, I've been in this spot for millennia, and I would like to stay in this spot, and I've worked hard to get here, and this is my path. I'm going to eventually get to the ocean, and just tumble down the river. And then other times the rocks will be like, yes, change of scenery, thank you. And so long roundabout to get to my question, what do you ask? Do you ask about attunements, and how do you go about do that? And then also, how do you hear the answer?
Yeah, so I do ask permission, both with trees and stones. And for me, usually I feel like I get a very clear, intuitive answer. If for some reason I'm not getting a clear answer, then I would often, maybe then default to either muscle testing or using a pendulum or something. But usually I feel like the answer is pretty clear. And, there are some times when I might get a no on something. And obviously when that happens, I honor that no. But I feel most of the time, at least when it's coming to like asking about a stone or a tree being attuned, most of the time the answer I've gotten is a yes. But yes, I don't just take stones, or just I try to listen, or feel which stone is calling to me, and even then, if I pick it up, do you want to go on this journey? Do you want to be attuned to Reiki, or do you want to be on my altar? Whatever the question is, just really inviting the spirit and the intelligence of that stone to be in that conversation, so that it's not me just imposing my will on that being.
Yeah.
So I have to add one thing to that we were in Tibet, and the same thing, asking some of the stones, do they want to come home with us? And the shaman that we went with, Bola Banstola, is a Nepali shaman. And he was talking about, when you take stones, make sure you take two, invite, ask, and to have two of them, because they want to have a companion from their place.
Yeah, beautiful. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you for sharing that.
His little ears popping in voice popping in my ears of the stones saying, we need our buddies.
Well, I think it's helpful to have the conversation around this, because lots of people are going to be like, what? Or I already do that, but a lot of people will be like, what? Like, I can attune stones and trees, and it's funny, like you said, Colleen, it didn't occur to me. It's like I have this relationship with this tree outside of my house, and such a deep teacher through so many different aspects. And why have I attune animals? Why haven't I never ever thought to ask if, do you want to be attuned to Reiki? And I already know, because I asked as soon as we were like, you want to be attuned? I already know it's yes. But that it was like a little very jumping kind of gleeful at the time. No pun intended.
Thanks, Brett.
So, but it's helpful to have these considerations. It's helpful to have these kind of tools and techniques and tips and tricks around these, because people want to know about how to go about doing this. And like you said, Brett, just that respect and not imposing if maybe they don't, for whatever reason, want to be attuned. And then like Colleen, the 2 stones, I didn't know about that either. And that makes a lot of sense. So yeah.
Yeah, so if I've traveled and asked stones if they want to come back, it's like, okay, now I need 2. So there's a little bit in the thing that, and we can finish up with this topic if there's more, but I also want to make sure we have time. I want to know about the cards that you developed and coming out.
Real quick before you finish that.
Okay, before you do that.
You at the beginning, you mentioned that how you're attuning trees is with maybe a surrogate, or can you just explain how the process you're doing now that we've kind of come through the whole conversation?
Sure. So originally, in the beginning of my journey with this work, originally I would do it, having a surrogate, and whether it was just an object or pretending that the tree is a person in front of me on a chair, like that's how I did originally. And then it has evolved now with the Reiki crystal, where I just simply invite my Reiki crystal to empower the tree. And so, that's how I do it with the Psychic Reiki. And then when doing the Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki, I would just invite that the ignition be for the tree, or in this case, it was for many trees at once. So, my invitation would be to play with any and all of those possibilities. You could also, depending on how big the tree is, you could use the Reiju process for empowering a tree. So, but probably the simplest, the easiest, since everyone who's been part of today's podcast is empowered now to their own Reiki crystal, is you could just simply ask your Reiki crystal to empower that tree. And you would do so just by simply, again, first in asking the tree if it would like to be attuned. And if the answer is yes, which my experience is most of the time is, if the answer is yes, then you would just simply ask your Reiki crystal, please empower this tree to its own Reiki crystal, and it will run a little treatment on the tree. If you want to embellish that treatment with a deeper healing, sending to the roots and to the leaves and maybe even the land around the tree, you could certainly embellish it. But all you would need to do is simply ask your Reiki crystal to empower the tree, and it will run a short little session on the tree that then creates a Reiki crystal for that tree.
I love that. I'm thinking of sometimes what I think of as some of the trees, they're watchers on a trail, or, there's 2 of them side by side, or a circle of trees, and thinking of attuning the trees. Robin of Green Canyon is coming to mind. This is just beautiful old growth tree land, and thinking of people walking by them and having them attuned and just emanating that energy for them. Really excited about it, Brett. It's like I have a whole thing I'm going to be doing. I know. Not for Robin, but with my son. What's Mom up to? She's out attuning trees and the stones.
Oh, too awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so yes, let's go ahead and get to your cards. So go ahead, Colleen. I just wanted to.
Well, I'm just excited to hear about them and what you're calling them and what they're about.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I was doing a healing. It was a group energy healing in Mount Kisco, New York. Maybe there were like 20 or 30 people there. I don't remember. But at the end of the healing, a woman came up to me after the healing. She said, I really loved that healing, and I work for US Games, and would you be interested in creating a Reiki deck for US Games? And I immediately said yes. And then I'm not an artist by any means in terms of visual art, so I sat for a few weeks trying to get a sense of who would be the right artist for this. And the beautiful thing is working at Omega Institute, exposed to a number of amazing people, and one of whom is a fellow who used to run the art hut at Omega for the staff. So there's art classes that have always happened for the staff here for many, many years, and fellow Ben Scheikowitz. And so I started looking at some of his artwork on Facebook, because he was no longer working at Omega. He lived in North Carolina now. And as I was looking at his artwork, I was immediately seeing some paintings that he had already created that would already, in their own right, be perfect for the deck. And then there were others which, he maybe needed some inspiration to create, right? So I reached out to Ben, and he agreed to help create this deck. And so that was in 2017, I believe, that we signed that contract with US Games. And so, it's taken them a number of years to create enough cards for there to be the full deck. And so it's basically 44 cards. Each card is empowered to its own Reiki crystal. And then there's a thing, I don't really have time to teach it here today, but there's a way that you can kind of put your consciousness into a Reiki crystal and have it then focus the energy in a certain particular way, right? So I've done that with each of the cards in the deck, so that not only does each card have its own Reiki crystal, but it is kind of imbued with a particular flavor that relates to the image that's on the card. For example, one of the cards is of a woman named Amina Eagle. And she worked at Omega for many, many years. She was really one of the founding members of Omega. And everybody at Omega always loved her because she was so kind. And there was just this kindness that is embodied in her face. Ben had already created that painting before we had ever been, made this offer from US Games. And I said that, upon seeing that painting, I was like, that is the card for the deck that is going to represent the precept on just for today, I will be kind. And so in that, I've put a Reiki crystal into that card, and I've kind of programmed it to bring the person, whoever has the deck, who's using that card, to bring them into a Reiki meditation on Mikao Usui's precept for kindness, and to just kind of bring them into that Reiki meditation for kindness. So that's just one card among 44 other cards. So there's cards that are about some of the Reiki symbols to kind of just embody that energy. And so the idea with the deck is that there's basically 44 healers that you have with you through the deck, and each of those healers, you can kind of get a sense of what their energy is about from the image that's on the card. And so you can then play with those to send yourself what I call little micro healings, right? So you can each card, and you can even lay them out in terms of what do I need for today. So there's a book that also goes with the deck, and the book has different spreads for ways you could use the card for particular layouts to bring healings to your life in particular ways. So I'm really excited for the deck to come out. I don't have my own copy yet because they're still being printed and shipped, and even though the deck doesn't come out until July, US Games did say they would make a special shipment to the Omega bookstore so that we have them in time for the Reiki conference. So I'm really excited to actually get my hands on a deck, because I want to play with them. I did create a mini deck when we were first kind of toying with the idea, where I had printed some of Ben's photos and glued them onto some cardstock, but to have the actual deck is something I'm really looking forward to. And I want to then probably make some videos to kind of teach people how to use the deck. And but I'm very, very excited, and some of the artwork is really just amazing. I mean, like, I know none of you know Amina Eagle, but once you see that image of that card, you'll get that sense of, oh yes, she embodied kindness And another thing about that story is she passed away a number of years ago, but it was 2 days before she passed that I sent her a Facebook message telling her that Ben and I had this contract with US Games and that I would love for her image to be the card that represented the precept on kindness. And she agreed to that. And then 2 days later, she passed. And so I felt like almost like, maybe like she was holding on for that, for that agreement to be made so that we could use her image in the deck that way. So I'm very, very excited about the deck. And again, there's different suits. So there's a suit of what I call Reiki's Foundation that works with the symbols and also the image of a sui. And then there's a deck of what I call different saints, where there's different energetic portals that are in the cards connecting you to different both living saints and historical saints that kind of just bring their energy into a healing. And then there's again, just so much about the deck that I'm looking forward to when it comes out in July. And folks can pre-order it through US Games.
This link will be in the show notes where you can go to the pre-order, but I clicked on the one that you provided for us, Brett. And so just to show everybody, there's Macau Sui, there's that card. If you're listening, you can go check this out on YouTube. And so here's just a preview of the different cards. They're beautiful.
Yeah, Ben's an amazing artist, and I'm just really thrilled for this deck to be coming out. And also, like I said, I just want to get my hands on one to literally play with it myself.
I bet. Well, so, and yeah, beautiful cover too. So did I hear you right? And you might have even said this about your Psalms earlier. You're attuning the actual cards with your Reiki crystal, which is different than imbuing.
Right. Yeah. So the cards are attuned, and they can send you Reiki, or they will send you Reiki upon your request. And that is a concept that I had played with for a number of years previously. Both there is another card deck that I've created that's not through US Games, that's with my Magical Awakening energy healing system. And it was the same concept of empowering the cards and seeing, and that does work, and I've worked with it in that way. And then there's also, just the work that I've done with Reiki, with stones and trees, and just realizing you can attune living beings and also inanimate beings and ask them to hold the energy in a particular vibration and to send that to you. And so the cards are kind of a living example of that, and the ability to work with the energy in that way. So I'm very excited for them to be coming out this summer. And like I said, I can't wait to get my hands on that first deck so that I can play with it myself.
Well, I guess I'll get to get some at the Wisdom of Reiki conference. They'll be there in advance.
They promise that they will have them at the Omega bookstore. So, hoping all the shipments and everything happens as planned.
Get there on time.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to share anything about any of your other offerings? I know that you teach Reiki and classes and other things. Do you want to share about that and how people find you and where?
Yeah, so, I do teach in person. Besides the Reiki conference at Omega, I do teach a level 1 and 2 Reiki this summer, the weekend of July 12th through 14th. That's a level 1 and 2. It's mostly a fairly traditional training, though I do weave in just a little bit about Psychic Reiki, and I do offer the Reiki Crystal Empowerment usually towards the end so that people have that as well. And then I'm also teaching a Reiki Master Weekend, October 18th through 20th, also at Omega Institute. You can find the links to that both on the Omega Institute website and also on my website, brettbevell.com, which has my live events. I do have another website, which you mentioned earlier as well, academyofloveandlight.us, and on there I have some online classes. And one of those that I just want to invite people to check out is that there's a monthly what I call a Psychic Reiki community immersion, where basically it's a $10 a month subscription, and everybody who's a member of it, we get together once a month, and I empower people to psychic Reiki if they don't have it. I talk them through doing a self-treatment, and then the most fun part is at the end, like the last third of our time together, we send a mutual healing all to each other simultaneously, which is really quite joyful and amazing. So again, that's available on academyofloveandlight.us, as well as some other energy healing trainings and offerings there as well. And one can also, again, if you just want to learn more about psychic Reiki simply through a book, you could do so either through the book Psychic Reiki, which was published by Monkfish Publishing, and there was also another book that I had that came out earlier than that called New Reiki Software for Divine Living. And those both explore the psychic Reiki concepts.
That's right. You talked about your bio talked about your app. So if you still have time, maybe you can share just a little bit about your app.
Yeah, so it's an app that I'm part of. It's not just me, but it's an app that was created by Mindvalley. The app is called Soulvana. And so I'm on there. There's some psychic Reiki healings that are on there. There's also some healings from some other wonderful energy healers, Shaman Durek's on that app, as well as Regan Hillier and some other people. The thing is that app, it was very active for a while, and then it's not that they've discontinued it, but they've stopped putting new content on it. So it's kind of, it still exists, and it's still a beautiful app, and I still sometimes listen to healings from it myself. The healings often between 10 to 20 minutes, but it's still out there. So it would just be called the Soulvana app, which is offered through Mindvalley.
Great. Wow. Oh, go ahead, Robin.
I was just going to wrap up. So I think this has just been fantastic. I think everybody who's listening to this, us included, you're going to be like, okay, how much time do I have to go out and talk to the trees and see which ones I'm going to be attuning today? And those stones and all the other things that didn't think of before. So just really appreciate this conversation, Brett. As always, it's a great joy, and we learned so much. And thank you for that healing experience at the beginning as well, the crystal Reiki. And yeah, it's just fantastic, and excited to be working with that also. So as far as we're concerned, you can find us at reikilifestyle.com. All of our things, classes, distance Reiki shares, and all the other things that Colleen and I do, which is a lot. So, and Colleen, I know you'll be seeing Brett in just about a month.
I know. So excited. Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me and having me at the Wisdom of Reiki conference too. I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited that you're part of it, and also just want to give thanks to both of you for having me on your program today. I feel very blessed and honored to have had this conversation with you today.
Yeah, thank you. My mind is going off on, okay, I'm going to start with playground, the trees at the playgrounds, and where the kids hang out. Just really, so yeah, my mind's going squirrel.
All right. Well, we better let you go, Brett. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our listeners.
And the trees and the stones and the
Yes.
objects. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.